there's an interesting concept around discussions and debate and sort of being able to serve as a disruptive force within the system that somehow starts to shake things up in a way that I think most people don't really expect. The DA, a few weeks ago, if you guys remember, releases their sort of replacement to BEE bill. And the idea that, BE hasn't worked, we have to try a new strategy instead. And then you go a little bit further, you have the G20 coming up. Donald Trump completely snubs the G20. By the way, Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, has now also decided to snub the G20. He will also not be coming to South Africa. And you can kind of see why he wouldn't. Javier Milei is a full-blown capitalist that refuses to allow for government interference in the economy. In fact, the whole of Argentina is just Javier Milei and the ruling party slashing regulation and getting the government out of the way so that people can actually do business. So you can imagine for someone like Javier Milei looking at what is happening in South Africa, there's just no way that he's going to feel comfortable coming here. But okay, so that sparks the debate around BEE once again renewed. Now, of course, South Africa has a massive victimhood drug addiction where a sizable group of black people in South Africa love to buy into this victimhood complex, this idea that we are innocent little victims and we can only really fix ourselves with free handouts. People have to give us stuff so that we can actually move forward. I had this post on X yesterday. Now, those of you who have watched my videos before, you will know the math behind this and exactly what I go through here, explaining why affirmative action doesn't work. But in order to put it in a bit more of a sort of example that doesn't include math, right? Affirmative action is the rearranging of the chairs on the Titanic. It's not adding new chairs. It's not taking people off on lifeboats. It's literally just rearranging the chairs. Because affirmative action in and of itself can't actually achieve anything. Now, affirmative action, at least in theory, and that's really part of what we're going to be talking about in this video today, but affirmative action, at least in theory, is this idea that, okay, so a lot of black people were previously disadvantaged. We need to give them an advantage in the workforce so that they can actually be employed and so that they can actually start to participate in the economy, which, by the way, black economic participation in the economy is vital to the success of South Africa. As sad as it is to say, there's just not enough white people in this country. We are about 3.8 million people. If we were the only country and if we were the only ones to exist, there just wouldn't be enough consumers to actually continue to hold up the economy of this country. That's why even in the apartheid era, what you saw was when the entire world started to sanction South Africa, the South African economy started to crumble. It was starting to get harder and harder to get anything done because we just don't have the base to actually support a full-blown economy. This is the difference between us and America. America has the internal consumer base that they don't need the rest of the world because they can just buy their own stuff and that will be perfectly fine for them. We don't have those numbers. So black economic empowerment is paramount to the success of the South African economy. But the idea here is we give them a leg up and they'll start to participate in the economy. But that in and of itself doesn't mean anything if you're not growing the economy. If there are no jobs available for black people to move into, then there is quite legitimately just nothing going to happen, right? You're just moving the chairs around. Now, the sad part of this is B is the same thing. It's the same concept. It's this idea that we're going to give black people a little bit of an advantage so that they can start to participate in the economy. The same way that employment equity and affirmative action is supposed to be. Although employment equity is a lot more punishment, it's not really so much about incentives and creating incentives for people to actually allow black people to participate in the economy. It's more punishment of anyone that allows white people to participate in the economy. But that's neither here nor there. It's not in the scope of the video, at least. Okay, but so you have black economic empowerment that seeks to do this. You have affirmative action that seeks to do this. But without economic growth, black economic empowerment and affirmative action simply moves the chairs around. It doesn't add any new chairs. You need economic growth in order to add new chairs for people to actually be able to sit on, because currently all it's doing is it will allow a few more white people to stand with the majority of black people. While some white people and some black people and some colored and Indian people might be sitting down, everyone else will just be standing. The issue is, and this is sort of the catch or the trap that communists consistently fall into, because communists always have these grand plans of fixing everyone's lives and making everyone's lives better. The problem is that all of their plans are reliant on another leg, the growing of the economy. because you can give away money. You can try to tax the rich and give it to the poor. The issue is that never actually works. And if you don't believe me, here's author Laffer, the man that was attributed, or at least people said that he created or invented the Laffer Curve. He didn't. The Laffer Curve has been known for about 1,400 years by people who were the early economists in the world. They all understood the concept of it. Now, just very quickly, when you look at the Laffer Curve, you need to just know this. The Laffer Curve, think of it like this. If your tax rate is 0%, no matter how much people earn, you'll get 0% taxes. You'll get literally 0 rands in taxes. If your tax is 100%, you will get 0 rand in taxes, because at 100%, if people go to withdraw their money and instead they get a bill from the government, no one's going to work, right? So the sweet spot lies somewhere between 0% and 100%. And the sweet spot literally just suggests what is the optimal tax rate to get the optimal amount of money out of the people. If you go over that sweet spot, you'll ultimately end up collecting less for every percentage that you charge. So you can think of it as if your tax rate is 10%, you'll never be able to collect 10%. You'll collect maybe at a great coefficient. You'll collect between 7 and 9%. But you'll never get 10% because people will find ways of ignoring taxes to some extent. But if your tax rate is 50%, right, you might only be able to collect about 30%, because the gap between what the tax rate is and what you're actually collecting will widen the higher the taxes go. So that's the Laffer Curve. But here is author Laffer explaining what happens in an economy when you have higher taxes.
We had it with John F. Kennedy in the U.S. We had it with Ronald Reagan. We've had it with Donald Trump. We had it with Bill Clinton. I mean, we've had some really good, absolutely cutting tax rates and how well they performed in the U.S. And, it shouldn't surprise anyone if you tax people who work and you pay people who don't work. Do I need to say the next sentence to you? What you want to do in this world is you want to reward things that are good and penalize things that are bad. If you want more unemployment, pay for people to be unemployed. If you don't, it's just plain incentives based. And that's all I can say. I mean, you tax rich people and try to give it to the poor people. And if you do that, you're going to get very few rich people and lots of poor people. I mean, incentives really matter.
That's legitimately what it is. And the fact is, we have this real data in the world. What happens when you cut taxes and you get out of the way? People actually start to work and you end up collecting more money, not less. Now, South Africa, of course, is the most taxed nation on earth. And that's exactly the problem. For communists, all of their plans sound good on paper, but they can never get the economic growth to actually support the plans. Why can't they get the economic growth to actually support the plans? Well, because their plans literally destroy economic growth. No country has ever taxed itself into prosperity. But okay, so as the narrative is now unraveling, one should say, around BEE, you even have Moeletsi Mbeki that has come out and actually explains how BEE even came into existence. BEE wasn't an invention of the ANC. Oh, no. BEE was invented by a white man. The man's name, Atie du Plessis. Now, if there has ever been a white name, that would be that white name. It's sort of up there with Pete. But ultimately, as it turns out, Atie du Plessis and the people over at Sanlam, they were pivotal in the transformation or the transition from old South Africa to the new South Africa. And they were very much arguing and debating and negotiating with the ANC on what the right steps is moving forward. A lot of people in the ANC, however, didn't like BEE because they understood that this isn't actually going to work. Moeletsi Mbeki says he was one of the people who were very much against BEE because he explained this exactly the same way. You're just moving the chairs around. You're not actually creating new chairs. You're not putting new chairs in the room. So why would we do this? Cyril Ramaphosa, however, was the man that loved the idea. So what was Atie du Plessis after? Did Atie du Plessis really care about the economic empowerment of black people in South Africa? I think yes, because he's greedy. He wants to make more money. And if more black people have money, he has more customers. But there is another angle to this that most people never seem to understand. Throughout the world, there are two economic systems that almost everyone knows: communism and capitalism. Everyone knows about it. There's a third economic system, however, and that's the system that is in power right now throughout the world. And dependent on, right, which side of the aisle you fall on, if you're a capitalist, you're going to call every country in the world a communist country. If you're a communist, you're going to call every country in the world a capitalist country. Never mind the fact that almost all of the countries throughout the world look exactly like China. They operate exactly like China. The only difference is that almost all of the Western countries have this election thing that happens that supposedly give people the power to choose, except every government they choose is pretty much always the same government as the one that was just replaced. But hey, it's power to choose, so congratulations to you. But they all look very similar to China. What is China? Now, people will say, well, it's state-sponsored capitalism. No such thing. Can't exist. Right? Other people will say, well, it's stakeholder capitalism. No such thing. It cannot exist. What it is, and what most people don't know, is corporatism. Corporatism is when the state and the corporations get married. And in that marriage comes some unholy crap, like corporations making lots and lots of money and everyone else being poor and working for said corporations. It's the answer to the age-old problem that socialists have run into, and that is, how does the government, through central committee, actually govern and operate the economy? Because the economy is way too complex. Well, you just get a bunch of companies to do it on your behalf. And that is what this B-BBEE thing was. Atie du Plessis managed to get Sanlam and his own companies in with the government. The idea was that, hey, we're helping you get elected. We're helping you play to the strengths of your base. In turn, you help us out, right? You give us some of those pension funds. You give us some of the money from the state, some contracts from the state. We help each other. And as this has continued, someone like Cyril Ramaphosa has built nothing in his entire life, but has benefited greatly from the ideas and the concepts of BBEE. This in spite of the fact that it has not benefited anyone else in this country. And you ultimately, when you go through this article, Moeletsi Mbeki actually explains in so much detail just why BBEE doesn't help. Transferring shares from white people to black people does not grow the South African economy. BBEE did not contribute to the South African economy and did not create new wealth. They were distributing the existing wealth of metropolitan wealth. However, some connected individuals, including Cyril Ramaphosa, were in favor of BBEE and the benefits which came with it. Cyril Ramaphosa went off to persuade the new ANC government to discuss how it should adopt black economic empowerment policies. This is why the ANC cannot let go. Even now, the DA is celebrating that the ANC has said BBEE is under review. What the DA still fails to realize is that BBEE can never be replaced, because fundamentally at the heart of the ANC's entire approach is this idea that BBEE empowers the people that they need in order to stay in power. So how do we fix South Africa? We fix the education system. First and foremost, education needs to be fixed. Because the other thing that is actually far more important, but will take much longer to actually get done, we need a country that goes back to the Bible, that goes back to Christ, that goes back to serving God, because we need to fix the housing crisis in South Africa. And I don't mean houses in terms of buildings that you live in. I mean housing as in the household, the nuclear family, the father in the home. One of the greatest indicators of success is, did you have your father in the home? Was your father there or was he not? We need more fathers in the home with their children, but that will come through culture, that will come through faith, and we need that. So that revival is super, super important, but it is a slow process because it has to be voluntary, right? You can't force this onto anyone. Then we need a government that prioritizes growth rather than redress, which is just an asinine concept in the first place. And we need a government that punishes the guilty in order to protect and defend the innocent. Right now, we have a government that punishes the innocent by showing mercy to the guilty. If we can get that done, South Africa could actually be a fairly great country. I do actually believe that. Anyways, let me know in the comment section down below what you believe. Hit the like if you liked it, if you didn't. Massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons as well as the YouTube channel members. Patrons, link in the description down below. YouTube channel members, join button right below this video. Massive shout out and thank you to each and every one of you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.